Welcome everyone to episode 76 of the Gully Blanchard podcast. My name is Ryan, coming to you from the continent of California, live and direct on a recorded podcast. You could check all 76 episodes of the Gully Blanchard podcast out at gullyblanchard.podbean.com. Also available on iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify. We're now music. You can also check out the wrestling articles that I've written at No Coast Bias, the Sacramento Kings stuff I've written at royalpain.com. Shout out to Derek for always coming through and letting me get some good spaces to do some writing. So yeah, last week was a pretty cool show. I was joined with D.A. Azario. We talked a little bit about the Jets, the Eagles, a little bit of wrestling. D.A.'s a good dude. You could follow him at DA_Azario on social media. This week, man, this is a guest I wanted to talk to for a long time. One of the funner follows on Twitter. Dude always has me laughing with three very simple words. I call him Mr. Everything is Wrestling. Ben Coyle, man, welcome to the show.
Hey, man, thanks for having me. You know, you said it's been a long time coming, and it really has. You know, we've been interacting and befriending for a while, so it's good to kind of sit down and chat.
Yeah, man, definitely. So let's kind of jump into it, man. But first, where can people check you out and follow you on Twitter?
It's at Comic Coil on basically everything. You'll get a lot of Lakers stuff, a lot of wrestling stuff, some nonsense, but hopefully, you know, you'll enjoy it. And if you follow me, man, hit me up, interact with me. I feel weird when people like follow me and then, you know, I've had people say, "Oh, I don't want to tweet you. You're always tweeting." Nah, man, hit me up, interact. You know, call me out if I say something stupid.
Yeah, man, definitely. So I know one of the things that we do have in common is our love of pro wrestling, and you're a Laker fan. I'm a Sacramento Kings fan. So I want to jump into the NBA first, man. Where were you when you found out you got LeBron?
It was a Sunday. I just got home from the gym. You know, I had the Woj alerts on. Wasn't really thinking we'd hear anything till Monday. I just sat down, my phone beeped, and I looked over, and it's just like one of those things where you had to read it twice, you know, and then you had to open it and check and then double check. And I was like, you know, really in a state of, I still am in a state of shock about the whole thing, to be honest with you. But it was an awesome Sunday to kind of share that with everybody on Twitter, all the Lakers people I follow and stuff, and just kind of see all the chaos unfurl from that.
So what are your expectations of the team this year? Because you get a lot of different people with a lot of different thoughts. I've heard some people say they can finish as low as the 8th seed, as high as the 2nd seed. I'm of the belief with that kind of team, not necessarily with the crazy pieces that they added, but you know, with having Ingram, Kuzma, you know, Lonzo and those guys, you know, LeBron can drag just about anyone to the finals. We showed that in Cleveland. But I think having that much youth and athleticism around him is only going to prolong his career. What are your expectations coming into the season?
It's funny, at work the other day, me and a guy I work with sat down and kind of jotted down our top 8 seeds for both. And it's tough, man. The West is tough. You know, I think I had Houston 1, Golden State 2. You know, I think I had OKC 3. I think I had the Lakers somewhere around 5. You know, give or take 4 to 5. I think it's going to be an adjustment period, kind of getting used to it. But yeah, somewhere around 4 to 5. I definitely think they're going to make the Western Conference Finals, you know, but anything after that is just, you know, exceeding expectations.
Yeah, I definitely think that everyone in the NBA right now is playing for second place because of the Warriors. But if nothing else, I do want to see a Western Conference Finals with the Warriors and the Lakers, just because I think those are the two best teams now, with I think Houston taking a step back, and you know, Golden State obviously adding Boogie, and they're pretty much going to be, I don't want to say an automatic 1 seed because I don't know how they're going to approach this regular season, but you know, to get anywhere in the Western Conference, you're going to have to go through Oakland. So to see that game on Christmas Day, and you know, hopefully get to see them in a 7-game series in the finals with that much talent in LA is going to be a lot of fun. And I am I am completely biased when it comes to this. I'm a huge Rajon Rondo fan. I think he's been misunderstood at every team. I loved him when he was in Sacramento. I really love watching him play in Boston. So I'm interested to see how that whole dynamic works with, you know, LeBron, because you know, Rondo does work wonders. He definitely helped Anthony Davis and Boogie out a lot in New Orleans. He's usually a big man's best friend with the pick and roll, so I'm interested to see how he makes the young guys like Lonzo, Kuzma, and Ingram play better.
Rondo is very complicated for me. I'm also
Yes.
the same way of you. I love Rondo. I think he's a stud. I think he's, a true point guard. I think he gets a bad rap for being utterly competitive and all that. But at the same time, he's a Boston Celtic.
Oh
You know,
yeah.
as a Laker fan, I don't hate anybody. Like I'm a guy that I'm a diehard Lakers fan, but I root for other people. Like I love to see Anthony Davis kill. I love to see different players for the league, but I loathe the Celtics. So it's complicated seeing Rondo come over, and he almost came over a few years ago too. So to see him on the squad and really being a leader in that first game. If you watch, I mean, for what it was, it's preseason, but directing traffic, calling up huddles, like it's going to take some getting used to. I'm sure there's some tweets in there I got to go delete about some things I said about Rondo before anybody sees him. But yeah, I'm a big believer in him. I'm interested to see if he's going to start this year. Lonzo had some injury stuff over the year. I'm a pretty big believer in Lonzo. So it'll be interesting.
Yeah, actually, a lot of people I think Lonzo gets a bad rap just because of his dad, but I actually enjoy. I like Lonzo the same way I like Rondo in the sense to where I'm kind of an old school guy in the sense to where I like my point guard to not be a literal point guard but a pass guard. For me, like I grew up loving the guards that would get you 9, 10 assists a game from that point guard position. Jason Williams is probably my favorite player of all time. It just the different creativity he had on the court and things like that. I love the pass first point guard. That's what drew me to Rondo when he was in Boston. He was setting up, their big three. He was getting triple doubles from the point guard position, which was rare at the time because there weren't a lot of point guards that could get you those 10 rebounds a game. So now it seems like, everyone can do it. But I loved watching Lonzo's game because he was definitely someone who would get his teammates involved and set his teammates up to be successful. His jumper, it is what it is. I don't think he's ever going to ever be a player that averages 20, 25 a game. But I think he can definitely help the younger guys flourish, the Ingram, the Kuzma, and guys like that.
Yeah. I think this is going to be Brandon Ingram. I think this is going to be his year. I think he's going to really, really feed off playing with LeBron and Rondo and a new and improved Lonzo. But going back to, Stephon Marbury is one of my favorite all-time players.
Mm-hmm.
And one of his best quotes he ever said was, "Point guards are born, not made." And I feel it's the truest sense, man. They just like those true point guards, a lot of them from New York City, they just have a different understanding of the game and where it's going to be. And, Rondo's one of the all-time greats. So it'll be interesting. I remember, a guy telling me about Rondo years and years ago, right before his freshman year at Kentucky. And he was like, man, I played with this guy at AAU. He's going to be unstoppable. But he brought up the thing that's plagued Rondo. So he's like, man, his hands are too big. He can't shoot. And it's funny, Rondo was kind of the Kawhi before the Kawhi with these giant hands that, have sometimes troubled his shot. But, the Lakers game comes on here in about 10 minutes. So if you hear any, ruffling on my side, I'm probably just watching that in the background. So I apologize.
Hey, it's all good, man. I am, as I'm sure you've been seeing on Twitter, I've been live streaming just about every Raw from 1 to I'm now coming into 555. So I think that's
it's crazy. I saw your tweet, actually, I think it was this morning about that. You're in Ben Wall's title reign, sometime around 2004 maybe?
Yeah, I just got over 2000, just started 2004. I'm on episode 555. So it's kind of interesting, man. Like I've been fortunate enough to have a night job to where I work the front desk at a gym, and they're relatively cool, man. Like as long as I'm sitting up there, they don't really mind what I do. So I pretty much I put on WWE Network, and I've been watching old episodes of Raw from, in sequential order. And I put it out there a while ago. I was like, I'm just going to go until Punk leaves. And I think that's around around the 1100s. And I'm getting into
halfway there, essentially.
Yeah. I'm right before Benoit gets his belt. So it's interesting, man. 2003 was one hell of a year for WWE, man. Jericho and Christian were huge MVPs. This is always the year that I understand now why people stop watching because, there's no Rock, there's no Austin in the ring, there's no Taker, there's no Brock. That show is really being carried by a beardless Triple H who was starting Evolution and a little bit of Bill Goldberg. So I could totally see how they're trying a bunch of new things this year, and I can get how a lot of people would fall off.
So here's my question to you. You're a little bit younger than me. I'm old. I'm not going to say how old, but just old.
Yeah.
Were you watching at this time back then?
No, I was not.
So a lot of this is new. I mean, you've caught through. I'm sure you've seen some of the pay-per-views or some of the big matches. So what's your biggest takeaway from kind of seeing all of this new? Because this is right around the time when I fell out. 2003, 2004 is my junior, senior year at college. You know what I mean? So I was busy. You know, I was doing a lot. You know, Brock. We watched Brock every Monday when he came in college. You know, my roommate was a huge Brock guy. So what is your biggest takeaway from seeing this that you maybe didn't expect to see?
I didn't. Two of the things that stood out the most was I never really appreciated how good Lance Storm was. And with the exception of that very problematic feud that Triple H had with Booker T, and we all kind of know what he said and what, how that still is cringeworthy at the time. I think Triple H did the best he could with a bad cabinet of food, so to speak. Like the rap on him around this time is that he buried Rob Van Dam, he buried Kane, he buried Booker T. But Raw's always been a one-man dominant show. Like they have it now with Roman, or they had it with Austin or Cena. Like they're not going to change the title every week, or unless they shouldn't. So they really made Triple H a solid, consistent heel. In order for him to be booed, there has to be guys that are being cheered that he's beating or he's being dastardly. So I think he did a good job making RVD and Kane relevant. You could argue forever about should those guys have gotten the belt at the time. But I think Lance Storm is severely underrated, and I think Triple H, he'd finally got his chance to be the guy, and there just wasn't a good team there, and he had to bear a lot of that responsibility to make that team. And Mark Jindrak is one hell of an athlete. I forgot how fun he was to watch.
Yeah, there's people like that who will never truly get the credit they, deserve, I guess, when you look back and you just see how big and how fast and, the work rate these guys put out that kind of, carried a lot of those matches. Like I fell out watching a little bit after that, in the mid-2000s for a few years. I'd catch a pay-per-view here or there, catch, a little information here and there. But then I came back and there was no one new.
Yeah.
Remember I left for a few years and I came back and I was like, oh, who's the Carlito dude? He seems to be, then he's gone. So, that time they weren't having a good thing of making and creating new stars. So people, like you said, RVD, Kane, Lance Storm had to, operate in different roles that maybe they were used to and get a little bit higher up the card than maybe they were originally set for. And it was really awesome to see, people like the term is the brass ring. But those mid-2000s, mid-aughts matches, you really see people jump up and grab it and some crazy stuff. And I'm an ECW diehard. It hasn't held up well at all. A lot of this stuff, especially when you start, looking at CTE and you watch some of the matches. There's there's a lot of stuff not great there, but I was about as big of an ECW fan as you can be. I don't know if you guys follow me on Twitter. You've seen me always talk about on my 16th birthday. My mom got me tickets to Heatwave 98 here in Dayton, Ohio. And it was, it's still one of the greatest days of my life. But, it's great to see some of those ECW guys in a little bit different situation where they're not getting, busted open every match and having these big matches on Raw. It was cool to see.
Yeah, it's definitely different going back and watching that sort of CTE type stuff. I think, I wrote about it with Foley. Like, it's really hard for me to go back and watch some of those Foley matches and even the ECW stuff from back then, just because you see the amount of unprotected chair shots, and we know more now than we did then. But it's sort of uncomfortable for me, like, to go back and watch some of those old chair shots. And I don't know, the older I get, I'm 34. And you kind of get a different feeling. I just hope all these guys are okay. I go back and watch these old Foley matches or some of the stuff from ECW, and I'm like, man, I just hope Tommy Dreamer is in good health, or I hope the Sandman's okay, because these chair shots are those guys, especially in ECW, because they had to do everything they could to make a name for themselves. Those guys were swinging for the fences back then.
Yeah, I just, one of my all-time favorite feuds matches, and I was lucky enough, like I said, to see it live, is Masato Tanaka versus Mike Awesome. And if you go back and watch it, it's honestly painful to watch some of the chair shots Tanaka takes. I mean, square on his head, and the same with Awesome, And Mike Awesome, left ECW with the belt. They call him the Judas, the betrayer. And someone pointed out on Twitter the other day, and it's something I didn't even really catch, and it kind of bothers me a little bit. During one of the one night stand matches with Joey Styles, Mike Awesome comes out, and Joey Styles shoots on him about leaving the company. Says
Yes.
some pretty dastardly things, and Mike Awesome does a suicide dive during the match, and Joey Styles calls a suicide dive, and then he says he wishes Mike Awesome would have committed suicide.
Yeah,
And
I
two
remember
years
hearing.
later, he did.
Yeah.
And it's kind of crazy that they keep that on the network. It's probably something they should, edit out a little bit. Um, but yeah, you look back at that stuff. A lot of the guys from the '80s and '90s are gone. So
Yeah, I know one of the ones that, rewatching the 2003 Raw, like one of the ones that I forgot about how prevalent he was around this time was Test. And Test is someone who's no longer with us, and he was found to have he was found to have a severe case of CTE when he unfortunately passed, and that was another one. It's different when you watch these guys. I don't want to say you watch them slowly disintegrate because I think that's a bit hyperbolic, but like with all these chair shots or all these unprotected blows of the head, you do, if nothing else, you wonder like how much this is impacting their future quality of life. And with guys like Test and with guys like Mike Awesome, it sucks because you just never know like how much of this that we grew up watching and we grew up romanticizing, how much of that had to do with what them unfortunately taking their lives early.
yeah, yeah, and those dudes were living hard on the road too, and that's just
Yes.
the lifestyle of those, the boys back then. They went town to town. They went hard each town. They're working like crazy, and it's good to see some wrestlers, today, or superstars, that have kind of bucked the trend, of doing all that. I know the Young Bucks, Kevin Owens, Seth Rollins, and Sami Zayn used to always call their hotel room the scrub room because those guys never drank, they never did drugs. They just would go back, hang out, watch some old DVDs. And it's great to see those dudes, kind of set an example for the kids up and coming to, the road lifestyle can eat you alive if you're not careful.
Yeah, and another one that strikes me when I watch it is this around 2003 is the time where a real young Lance Cade, he was Garrison Cade at the time, came up, and that's another one that he unfortunately left us too soon, and you wonder like how much of this was the trappings of being a pro wrestler because those guys do like I've always said this, and I don't know where you come out of it, but I think being a pro wrestler, especially in WWE, is got to be the hardest athletic feat there is because if you think about it, these guys are away from their family 300 days a year. They're on the road. They're driving from town to town. Like I just recently drove from Lake Tahoe to Sacramento. That's a 2 hour drive. And after that alone, like I was exhausted. Mind you, those guys and girls have to find gyms. They have to constantly watch what they're eating. They're getting up at 5 a.m. for red eye flights. There is no off season. So I think being a pro wrestler is the hardest thing to do as far as from an athletic standpoint, like on a week to week basis.
Yeah, I 100% agree on that. It's an insane schedule when you really break it down. And it's funny. It's a thing that I think WWE needs to work on. They need to find some sort of off season for some people. I know. I think David, aka Davis Shoemaker, had an article about this a couple years ago about an off season for WWE. But some good examples of this. Or look at Ambrose. He's gone almost 9 months to a year. Look at Cena right now.
Mm-hmm.
Look at some other people. They get a few months off and they're in incredible shape. I don't know if you saw a picture Cena posted on Twitter.
Yeah, with all that full
Um,
hair and all the muscles.
yeah, it's comical. It
Yeah.
almost. But these guys get a couple months off and it's amazing what they can do for their bodies. So with such a stacked roster, it would be nice, to give these guys and girls a month off here, or there, 4 or 5 weeks off, just so they can recoup for their bodies and everything like that.
Yeah, I think another good thing with that would just be for the mental health standpoint. Like I imagine a guy like Roman Reigns is just like you've got to be tired of being on the road, taking jets or taking planes. Like being on a plane that much can't be healthy, let alone driving from like to Philadelphia Monday to Tuesday just to make a house. I would like to see there be some sort of emphasis on mental health and just being able to just recover a little bit better. And those guys they cut one hell of a schedule. Like they were in Seattle last night for Raw, which I missed because I was at work, but then they're going straight to Australia, and then who knows where they're going after that. And like that flight alone can put someone out for a day or two just with jet lag and things of that nature.
Yeah, I remember a while back, right around the first Saudi show, they were, on commentary, they were making a big deal out of it. But Seth Rollins had literally been around the entire world almost in like a 2-week span, and he was still having 20-minute matches on Monday.
Yeah.
And, it's crazy to think about. I was watching, kind of go back to the Lakers real quick. I was watching the Lakers preseason game. They were talking about LeBron, and they said LeBron spends about $1 million a year on equipment for recovery, whether it be hyperbaric chambers, oxygen treatments, and stuff like that. And, he's playing 82 games a year. He's always in the finals. So closer to about 100 games a year. And that's a third of the WWE schedule. And, these guys got no recovery. Maybe they're finding a cryo chamber around. Those are starting to pop up. But, they're hitting hit or miss gyms. It's, you brought it up earlier, finding healthy food is terrible. I mean, like, even if you have a full schedule, finding healthy food out on the go is a hard thing to come about. Imagine doing it at 12:30 at night in, Dearborn, Michigan.
Yeah. That's always been something that I marvel at. Like, I know that there's a lot of apps now, where you can track your calories, like MyFitnessPal, or, you could find healthier options at restaurants, that late at night, but it's got to be so difficult just to be on the road. Like you said, like, that show ends last night on Raw at Seattle. Like, you got to drive to the next town. You got to find a gym. In certain cases, you got to find a tanning salon. You got to check into your hotel. Like, the amount of travel that those guys and girls keep up on a week-to-week basis it's insane. It's one of the things that, I understand that there's always going to be a pocket of people that are going to think pro wrestling is fake or scripted, but it's something that for me, like, I just find it, I marvel at the amount of condition these guys and girls keep themselves in on a week-to-week basis, and still there for, they're there every week.
Yeah, I was a quick story. I went to Raw in, was it Raw or SmackDown? It was Raw in Cincinnati. I think it was July 23rd, and I was at a hotel down there the night before, and it was late. It was 11:30, 11:45 at night. Lashley walks off the elevator, and he's getting ready to go for a run. And then Alexa Bliss and Ember Moon walk in with their luggage, and I think I had I don't know what shirt I had on. I definitely had, like, I think a bootleg Brian Pillman shirt. And she sees me. She sees I have this wrestling shirt on, I'm there getting ready to check in. And she just gave me the look of, like, please don't fan out right now. I'm tired. Like, I just want to get to my room. And I just kind of gave them a nod, and they just smiled and checked in and went about their business. But you could just tell that they were exhausted. You know what I mean? A day of traveling. Who knows how many interviews they're doing. It's a crazy thing. And like you said, you don't realize how much driving, kicks your ass until you do it a little bit. I was driving an hour to work for a couple months there, and it was just exhausting me. So, a big shout out to all those guys, even the indie guys. I got some guys that I'm close with that work the indies, and, they're driving, they're trying to save money, trying to make a little bit of money. So they might, drive back from CZW shows in New Jersey after the show.
Mm-hmm.
Or, here Chicago's about 4.5, 5 hours. They work AAW at night. They might drive back that night. So they're getting in, 5, 6 in the morning. And, it's just a nonstop thing. So I think, a lot of wrestling fans take wrestling for granted right now.
I agree.
With some of the great product we're seeing and some of just the interactions with Twitter, like, you can reach out and talk to your favorite wrestler. I think a lot of people need to kind of enjoy this era we're in. I saw somebody on Twitter, I think my friend Jameel Rayburn of the A Show, Him and Justin Davis do the A show. You guys should check that out if you ever get a chance. It's great. But he called this era of WWE the content era.
Mm-hmm. I would agree.
And it was a great tag term of just the amount of content, you know. So, you know, last night we had Raw, tonight we had SmackDown, and tomorrow we've got, you know, 205 Live, NXT, and the Mixed Match Challenge. Like, we are very, very grateful.
Yeah, I've gone on record many times as saying this is probably the most, from an in-ring standpoint, I think this is the best WWE has ever been as far as, you know, giving you consistent product. Like, you got to think that match that Owens and Rollins had, the one where Owens quit. I think he quit like after the match or something, and he came back like 2 years later.
Yeah.
Like, that would be a match of the year candidate any year, in any era. Like, you take that in like a WrestleMania 21 era or 2003 or 2004. Like, that's one of the best matches of the year. But that's just like a normal throwaway. I don't want to say it's a throwaway match, but it's something where you're like, oh, I've seen that before. Or like a Roman versus Dolph. Like, these guys are putting on great matches week after week. Like, Seth has been a factory of just great match after great match. Him and Dolph have had an amazing rivalry. You know, these are matches that 10 years ago would transcend wrestling, and now it's like, oh yeah, Seth and Kevin just killed it for 30 minutes. You know, ho hum. Or the matches that even Finn Balor are putting on, like, even though he's been portrayed a little bit different onto you than I would prefer, but he's still going to give you a great match every time he gets in the ring. I think this is the best in-ring era that we've ever had. I think the characters, to develop characters the way that they used to, with the network and with social media. But I think this in-ring product is one of the best of all time.
Yeah, I don't even, you know, I wouldn't even consider that a hot take. I would consider that pretty much a quote unquote fact in a lot of ways. Like, you see stuff each week. Like, I don't know if you watch 205 Live a lot. I watch it sparingly. I check out the big matches. I'm a big Buddy Murphy fan, you know.
Australia's very own.
Yeah, he's about to, you know, I'm assuming he's going to win the title that's coming up. But
Yep.
Mustafa Ali, Cedric, those guys are having incredible matches every week. And it's just, like, those alone are just, you know, incredible stuff. And it's stuff that's not getting overlooked, but it's just, like you said, it's just getting absorbed, and no one's making a big deal about it. We know we're just moving on. We know we got another match Monday. But yeah, I know every year, January 1st, you know, we all make our New Year's resolutions, and some of those fall by the wayside, some of them don't. But I always start a notes app in my phone, you know, match of the year.
Mm-hmm.
And I always, this year included, you know, I fell off around, you know, March. Well, I think around May, I kind of fall off because even by May, April, you know, you've got 25 matches.
Yeah.
Whether it be, you know, Wrestle Kingdom, you've got, you know, WrestleMania, you got the Raw After Mania, you've got an NXT show in there, you've got, you know, all those indie shows that run during WrestleMania weekend. And it's just, you can easily have an actual legit match of the year, you know, spreadsheet that's 30 matches, 40 matches. And that's, you know, something in those, you know, mid WrestleManias we weren't getting at all.
No. It is something that especially, you know, I want to keep talking about 205 Live, and I watch it sparingly. Like, you know, I have two jobs. There's 7 hours of fresh WWE content on a week. I'm lucky if I get home some nights and I get through high noon or highly questionable without falling asleep. So I know
shout out to the guys on those shows, though.
They make sports so much fun. Like, those guys,
man.
They make it fun. They make it something you can laugh at. They don't take it too seriously. And yeah, those shows are definitely my speed, man. They like to have fun with it, and that's what sports to me has always been. But even with 205 Live, like, if I was to tell you, like, okay, the first couple of things you think of with WCW, you're probably going to be like NWO, Hall and Nash, Hogan, Goldberg, and then the cruiserweights. And I think the cruiserweights were so special at that time because you would get a Rey Mysterio and Eddie Guerrero, and it would stand out so much because later on in that night, you'd get, you know, Ice Train against Hacksaw Jim Duggan. So you'd get the really bad to offset the really good. And I think in this era, you know, you could put anything at 205 up. You could put Buddy Murphy and Mustafa Ali against, I think, anything in the cruiserweight area, and it would hold its own. But in 2018, there's so much product that you're like, oh, yeah, this guy's just had a 5-star 15-minute match. Next up is going to be, you know, Mustafa Ali and Tozawa, and they're going to have another great match. It's such an interesting time where there's so much good content. And not only that, it's so accessible, too. Like, I don't know about you, but I got farther into New Japan because of Twitter and because of GIFs and because of people that, you know, Twitter can get you into, you know, Progress, can get you into CMLL. You can find fan bases at Dragon Gate or All Japan or New Japan, and you can open up all these different encyclopedias of wrestling that we didn't have access to back then. Like, I remember watching ECW, we didn't get it in Sacramento. So I had one friend who would, you know, post the clips on his GeoCities page when I was young. And that's how you got ECW. And now you have access to all of this great content worldwide with just logging into social media.
Yeah, it's funny that you bring that up. This is kind of a story I haven't really told a lot of people, not because I'm a secret by any means, but it just doesn't come up that often. But back in the day, in like the late 90s, I was a huge person on the tape trading scene on the internet of people trading VHSs, wrestling VHSs, you know, all across the world. I remember I got big into ECW. I had just gotten the internet. It was like 98. I started like searching how to watch more of it. No, it was probably, I had to be like 96, 97. And I found, you know, these GeoCities websites where you could, you know, send money, and then a stranger on the internet, you would send a money order, and then a stranger would send you some VHS. And I remember I saved up my money to do it, and I sent it away, and my mom just looked at me and shook her head, and she just looked at me like a sucker's born every 2 minutes. And a couple weeks later, they showed up, and they weren't the best quality. You know, it's a copy of a copy. But it really exposed me to a lot of stuff different, you know, a lot of early Japanese stuff, a lot of ECW stuff. And eventually I kind of started, you know, selling and trading on my own, made a nice little profit as a 16-year-old. But you look now and you click, you know, with New Japan World, you know, WWE Network. Another thing I always suggest people try, I know everyone's networked out on wrestling, but the High Spots Network is really, really good also. It's you know, it's right in that sweet spot of $10 a month. One of their things they have right now is they have a lot of interview shows with the indie guys. Chuck Taylor and Trent have a really funny one. Excalibur, the PWG announcer, and a guy named Dan Barry, who's another indie wrestler, have a really great show. It's interviews with other indie wrestlers in hotel rooms. You know, they're usually drinking, having some fun, kind of very laid back. But they're good. And also, you know, every PWG show after it's been out a year also goes up. So I'm a huge PWG fan, and it can be troublesome to watch at times trying to find it because it's a DVD only. But, you know, you go back on High Spots and you can really check out, you know, they've got a lot of the Progress stuff, like you said, you know, and it's cool to see different eras and appreciate different styles, whether it be, like you said, Lucha or UK. And, you know, you can see WWE's pushing hard for that now with, you know, the UK tournament, the Cruiserweight Classic, the Mae Young tournament. They're trying to show all the different styles that are available and give people the option to become, you know, which ones they like, which ones they don't. And it's something that, you know, you would have told me 10 years ago, I would have never believed you.
Yeah, and that's kind of the same thing, man. And you know, I want to give a shout out to Al from Virtual Pros, because I know when I was a kid, you know, I've known Al for I'm 34, about 20 years now, and he was the guy who first got me into, you know, ECW and got me into New Japan. And I remember you used to watch like these events at his house because we went to the same middle school together. Shout out to Al from Virtual Pros, and he actually got me into getting tapes off of High Spots. Like I remember I got a King of the Death match with like Foley and Funk and Leatherface and a bunch of other guys. I honestly don't remember their names, but I remember just watching this and it was so totally different than anything they were doing. And I remember like Al and I would be in school and he'd tell me all about like Hayabusa or Tommy Dreamer or Sandman, and like it was so hard to get access to any of that stuff. And I look back, if there was like a 14-year-old me now, you can just get on Twitter and you can, stream a progress show, or you can follow along with All In. So I do think now more than ever, fans have access to any kind of wrestling that they want at their fingertips. And I think it's great because there's so much, even in WWE. Like, I think WWE, when it's at its best, is a huge buffet line of pro wrestling. Like, if you want that British strong style, or you want, some of the other stuff, like, you can always go NXT UK, or you can find stuff from Progress. And if you like, if you're a fan of Zack Sabre Jr., you can follow along. You can follow him on Twitter. You can tweet him. You can find out where he's at on each show. And no matter what show he's on, you're going to be able to catch that show from somewhere like Mesa, Arizona, which you wouldn't have been able to do as readily available 20 years ago.
Yeah. Shout out to Al from Virtual Pros. Tell my man that he's got to reprint the Hayabusa 400 degree shirt.
I know. I missed that one.
I missed it, and he actually posted a picture of somebody wearing it the other day, and it's awesome. But yeah, those dudes do great work over there. But yeah, it's funny as you start finding wrestlers, that you're into, and then you got to do that deep dive of, what's their best match, and you go look, and it's a couple clicks away, and I know a lot of people will follow, New Japan or Ring of Honor, and they'll just say, I caught the GIFs. Mm-hmm. And that's an absolutely valid way to watch a wrestling match. I know that a lot of people will say, you just saw the high spots, or you just saw this, and you didn't see all the storytelling. But there's a lot of people out there on Twitter who, that's their quote-unquote job, but they're doing really great stuff with the GIFs, and you can, that's a great way to absorb some content if you're short on time.
Yeah, for me, that's how I was able to follow All In, because I was working the night of All In, and I go back and forth with my opinion of Cody. Like, I've said it before, I don't love Cody in the ring. I think he's extremely valuable to independent wrestling, and I love what he's doing as a spokesperson for wrestling, and I respect what he's doing. And to me, I think All In is not ECW in a content standpoint, but I thought what he did with All In and what he's doing now is he's giving fans in America an alternative, the same way that you have a lot of fans now that are, disenfranchised of WWE for whatever reason, and they want that alternative. The same way back in 96 and 95, it's one of the things that helped push, the ECW, because it was something different. But even with All In, like, you can follow along with whatever happened at All In by multiple different Twitter follows. I think I followed it from like 4 or 5 different viewpoints of different people that were live tweeting, and it was pretty cool. Like, I felt like I was watching it, and I knew if there was anything else that really stood out that I wanted to watch that got good reviews, I would find a way to watch it. That's one thing that I think we all have access to do now, which I think is really good that we might not have always had.
Yeah. And there's another follow on Twitter. I think it's Myth GIF, however you guys want to say it. It goes either way. And they do a lot of Kevin Owens stuff and Sami Zayn stuff. And they do a lot of essays on this with just like their reactions to stuff. And it's crazy to see how much little stuff they point out that you might miss if you're watching a whole match of, the way Owens might look away when Zayn tags him, in their early days of tagging and stuff like that. So there's a lot of stuff that you can, absorb from that content. And like, All In, I think, All In was a thing all of its own. And, I'm really glad of those guys, did it. I'm a huge, Young Bucks fan. I have been for a long, long time, since the early days. Not to be like, I'm a bigger fan because I was on it early, but I've been a big fan of those guys. I'm a big PWG guy. And it's awesome to see what they're kind of, can do. I agree 100% with you on Cody. I think Cody's fine. I think Cody is doing amazing with what he has to work with. I think he's average in the ring, but I think he's gotten over as a heel. He's made himself a draw, whether people like it or not. I do think he's starting to become a little bit oversaturated. So he's currently holding belts in New Japan, Ring of Honor, and the NWA World Title. He's in the main event of King of Pro Wrestling coming up on the 8th. So it would, and a lot of people believe he's going back to the WWE. So maybe this is just his swan song on the Indies. So we'll see with that. But those dudes are doing great things for the business, and it's awesome to see people accepting it.
Yeah, I think one thing about Cody is I think I give him credit for this. He's made the NWA title relevant in one night, more relevant than it's been the last 20 years. And that's one thing I do give him credit for. When they announced All In, I think anyone with half a brain knew he was going to get the NWA title that night from Nick Aldis. But I think he did an excellent job. He made that title relevant. I think that's one thing that, TNA kind of missed out on, and I think hasn't really been a big deal since the glory days of WCW, where there really hasn't been an American alternative that was accepted as far as that's now he's bringing that tradition back of the NWA champion traveling across the country. And I think one thing that's really hard to do when you try to quote unquote bring tradition back is you kind of get stuck in your ways of how things used to be. And I think Cody's found a good blend of bringing tradition back through social media. And I think he's doing a good job with self-promotion. I do think, my personal opinion is becoming a bit much. I don't really see the value of him having the IC title from New Japan. I think that's something where, I was at the show in Cow Palace when Juice Robinson went over, and that crowd, that was the biggest pop of the night. And I'd like to see him kind of spread that stuff out a little bit more and focus on one belt. But he's done a good job making independent wrestling relevant in the United States, which is another thing that's only going to help pro wrestling as a whole.
Yeah. I mean, it's crazy. You say we're in the best era of in-ring performance in the WWE, and we're having a really great resurgence on the indies. Chuck Taylor, who's one of my favorite wrestlers, also a really funny Twitter follow. One of his favorite jokes to make is he always jokes, with everyone getting signed on the indies, now you guys are stuck with me. And he jokes, but him and Trent are great, but the WWE has been cleaning the cupboards lately. So a lot of these people have to make themselves stars, and it's good to see that people are, going for it. I know there's a lot of new people in PWG, I don't know if you watched much, but Walter, is making a big, Brody King, the Rascals. I don't know if you've seen much. They're local tag team out of Dayton, Ohio here. It's Desmond Xavier and Zachary Wentz. The Young Bucks have put them over big at PWG. They're all the PWG tag titles. They've been big in Dragon Gate. I really think they're the next great tag team.
Admittedly,
they're young, they're high flyers. I truly believe they are the next young great tag team, and it's really awesome to see what these dudes have done in a year.
Yeah, admittedly, I haven't, but it will be something that now, with Twitter, once we get done recording this, I can find them, follow them. And that's the good thing is you can follow along with pretty much any wrestler you want, especially with the indie guys. If you're a big fan of Walter, you can track where he's at. If he's in, Europe, or if he's in the States, or whatever matches he has, or, those shots that he delivers. It's something that we have access to all this stuff now that we never had before.
Yeah, it's crazy how a GIF can make or break a person's, not career, but it can put them on a pace to superstardom. One viral, I know everyone's seen it probably, but Cedric Alexander and Candice LeRae, he hit her with his finish, and she bounced, 2 feet in the air off her back, and everyone's seen that. It's just a famous, now, and they're all associated with it, and it's crazy how many people I know that don't watch wrestling or aren't huge wrestling fans that will send me something they've seen and be like, yo, this is crazy. And it's cool to see it, getting accessible to people that aren't hugely into it.
Another example of that for me is Joey Ryan with the King of Dong Style.
Yeah.
That was on highly questionable. An independent wrestling thing was on highly questionable. And yeah, it's a comedy spot, but there are now more people that know about Joey Ryan. There's more eyes that can follow him on social media and follow along with his career. And he may end up getting some new fans and some new followers from it. So it is one thing, like you said, one GIF or one, that's now his quote unquote gimmick. Even with All In, with the inflatable, the inflatable dicks that he had. Like, that's something that now will forever be tied to what he does.
Yeah, yeah. Joey's been around a long time. I think he knows what he's doing. And he posted on Twitter recently that someone booked him for their wedding. They got him a flight, they got him a rental car, a hotel room. They paid him his booking rate to come to their wedding. So, I'll never ever knock the hustle, man. So, if it's working for you guys, go after it. But yeah, wrestling comes in all shapes and sizes. So there's something for everybody at this point. And it's just one of the things where people aren't, they're against it. Wrestling's a hard sell, especially if you're older. If you didn't watch it as a kid, it's a hard sell at times. But I don't try to push it on people. You know what I mean? I was like, hey, if anyone ever asks me, hey, what's something if I wanted to get into wrestling? You talk about it a lot. What should I watch? I always tell them, just check out an NXT TakeOver show. I think it's the most accessible. It's about 2 hours long. It's a lot of different styles. And then they can make the decision on their own. I've noticed a lot of girls on Twitter, too, that have maybe got into wrestling or guys, too, have got into wrestling because they, oh, this person's attractive. This person's, really, really good looking. And then that kind of spawns into them being an everyday fan. And it's cool to see people adapt. And, I'm one of those people who's almost always optimistic. I like everything. It's pretty rarely when I'm really negative or critical on things. So I'm one of those people that always is encouraging people to look for stuff new, find new stuff. And, Twitter is the greatest thing for that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I can't tell you how many music groups or how many, T-shirts I've bought or how much wrestling I've picked up because of just that one app online. Like, you get access to whatever you want. But I want to pull back to one thing. You said even as a kid, like, how did you get into pro wrestling? Like, what sparked it?
It's a funny question. I don't really know. I always say my first memory of pro wrestling, my first vivid memory was The Undertaker debuting at Survivor Series.
Oh, yeah.
He was mystery partner on DiBiase's team. And I was a huge Bret Hart fan, huge Hart Foundation fan. And Undertaker, the DiBiase's team won that Survivor Series. Undertaker defeated a few people, got DQ'd, and then I think DiBiase pinned Bret. And even still to this day, I've always held a grudge against Taker for that. Because it's just my first memory. I think that was SummerSlam 90. So I had to be a fan a little bit before that because, I knew who was who. But that's my first, really vivid memory. That and the Warrior getting bit by Jake Roberts' snake. I'll never forget that.
Do you know that's why I'm scared of snakes to this day?
Yeah, same. I'm absolutely mortified of snakes.
And what's funny is they put out a DVD. Jake put out his DVD, Pick Your Poison. I think I was actually, I know how old I was. I was 21 years old, and I had my very first apartment. So it's pretty much like the scent of a Foreman Grill Corona.
Yeah.
Was always in my first apartment. And I got the Jake DVD, and I'm like, I'm 21 years old. I could walk down the street and buy a 24-ounce Corona. I'm a grown-ass man. Like, I could watch this. Dude, I put on that bonus clip of when he locked the somewhere in a room full of snakes, and I'm not even exaggerating. I just sleep with the lights on for a week. Because it just still, man, I can't be around snakes. I can't see them. I can't see them on TV. Like, my fiance and I go to Disneyland all the time, and there's one spot in Indiana Jones where a snake comes out, and I got to duck my head every time. I can't do snakes.
Yeah, I'm the same way, and I 100% attribute it to that.
Yes.
I don't know if when they did that spot, if they thought that it would have this lasting effect and it would be, talked about by many people, but it really, really did. And it's funny what you think of, when you look back at older wrestling, what stays with you and what doesn't. The same thing as when Jake feuded with Bad News Brown, and Bad News Brown had the New York Sewer Rats.
Yes, I remember that.
Which was just a cage with a black sheet over it. You never actually saw the Sewer Rats. But as a kid, I was invested. Mm-hmm. I was tuned in on that.
I remember too when Earthquake did the slam on Damien.
Oh yeah.
And I remember oh my God, they killed a snake on live TV. And before that, even when Jake turned heel, I had a Jake the Snake poster in my room. And I remember specifically it was bright yellow. I don't remember much of my childhood, but I remember that poster was bright yellow, and I had to have my dad take it down because I was like, I can't like this can't be in here because I kept thinking the snake was going to come off the TV, and I kept thinking it was going to come off the poster and attack me. And then what's funny is I met Jake. I think I was like 24, and I met him at a convention out here in the Bay Area, and it was before he was still in kind of some pretty bad shape from a substance abuse standpoint. But like I met him, and he signed my DVD, and I was like, oh man, like you're the reason that I'm scared of snakes. And we were talking to him and Road Dogg in the lobby beforehand. Dude just gave me like $50, and he was like, go get me 3 margaritas, and then spend the rest on. I was drinking Foster's at the time. He was like, spend the rest on that Australian shit you were drinking. And dude, bro, like the fan that I am, I brought Jake his 3 margaritas, got me about 4 Foster's, and had a day. But yeah, dude, Jake to this day is the reason why I'm scared of snakes.
Yeah, another really embarrassing story that I'll share about my childhood in wrestling. I was younger. It was Saturday. Saturday morning. I was watching wrestling. Probably just got done watching X-Men cartoons. And I grew up way out in the country. And my mom was like, "Hey, I'm going to go in town. You know, you need anything?" You know, and I was like, "Oh yeah, actually, Mom, if you don't mind, can you give me some cologne?" And she kind of stopped and looked at me. I was probably way too young for cologne. And she goes, "Cologne?" I said, "Yeah, just some cologne." She was like, yeah, I'll pick you some up. You know, what kind are you looking for? And I was like, oh, I want arrogance.
I knew where you were going with that, dude.
And the look on my mom's face, I'll never forget it. And she just had to explain to me that arrogance, you know, Rick Martel's cologne was not actually a cologne and what arrogance is. And I didn't think she understood what she was talking about, but I just wanted it. And I look back now that I'm older, I'm like, how many other people thought that was a real cologne? Like, how many little kids at least?
Yeah. I thought Sting's real name was Sting until like when I got on America Online. And I found out his name was Steve Borden. Because I remember telling my dad, I'm like, yeah, I'm a big fan of Sting. And he's like, you know, that's not his real name. I was like, what are you talking about? Like, he comes down the ramp and they say Sting. Like, why wouldn't they do that? And yeah, man, like it is funny what stays with you. Stuff like that, or you know, one of my first memories as a kid was being 7 years old. That's like one of my earliest memories of my childhood, and like watching WrestleMania 7 and watching Hulk Hogan against Sergeant Slaughter at that WrestleMania. That was on my 7th birthday, and like we had a big party for it. And yeah, I remember having the tape for years and years and years of that specific night.
Yeah, it's awesome. Like, you know, one thing, you know, the DVD essentially I said essentially twice, is a dead art form, sort of. But the WB has released some awesome DVDs over the years. And I wish they would kind of maybe get back to that a little bit, you know, just some collections and stuff. Because I like to have those. I'm old school. I have the Punk DVD. I have the Heyman DVD. I have the Owens DVD. But having those, you know, tangible in-hand objects was always cool, especially, you know, those old Coliseum videos.
Absolutely, man. I remember one thing that I'd like to see them bring back, and I think they should, and I don't know if they ever will, but I think it'd be cool. Like it'd be cool on the network to have you be able to buy like the old posters of those events. Like I would love to have like those old Royal Rumble posters, like from the '90s when they're all like walking up like that.
Oh, absolutely. Like they, you know, if you follow me on Twitter, you know my thoughts on the WWE merch shop aren't always the best.
Yeah.
But that's an easy money maker right there. Is vintage posters. I'm on eBay all the time looking up vintage Nike posters, whether it's an old school Deion Sanders poster, an old school Bo Jackson, an old school Ricky Henderson. You know, there's a huge market for those, and I'm one of those people that is a sucker that will buy it. And I think they might have some problem with some likenesses on some of those posters, or even releasing current day, you know. That poster with current day superstars would be a big hit. So
yeah,
a lot of options and ways they could go with that merch. That would be easy money.
Yeah, I went on an eBay rabbit hole recently where I started buying like old Randall Cunningham cards and old Sacramento Surge from the World Football League cards and stuff like that. And man, you can get stuck on those. I would love to see them bring back like the Randall Cunningham Rocket Man type poster, but like for the current NFL guys, or even doing like a mixed thing with WWE, like having like Kevin Owens or Braun Strowman as like those old like Sean Kemp the Rain Man type posters. Those would be cool to see those things come together.
Yeah, maybe we're just old people that are out of touch. But like, do kids still have posters in their
I don't think
wall?
so, man. I think posters are a lost art, and it's a damn shame.
Yeah, I've still got a nice like collection of mine from my childhood. I've got some cool Dion ones. I've got the Jordan, Wings poster, the original one.
Hmm.
I've got a couple cool Charles Barkley ones. So, I would love to see something like that come back, because WWE puts out so much merch, especially around the holidays, that something like that would be a huge thing that could do well. But maybe we're just old and posters aren't cool anymore.
I had a bunch of. You were talking about Stephon Marbury earlier. I used to buy Slam magazines and rip them apart and just put the posters of like him and Garnett up on my wall all the time. My whole middle school was filled with like the Source magazine and the posters of dudes dunking in Slam mags.
Yeah, my locker in high school, my junior and senior year, had the Allen Iverson pull-out poster where he has the old school Philly jersey on, and he's got all his jewelry on. And I remember like my senior year of high school, it being like the saddest day having to take down, my Allen Iverson poster that I'd had. And I was the same way. I had the gold Cash Money Records ad from the Source on my door in my room. And it was like the only thing on there, and I was so like proud of it.
Absolutely, man. So we're gonna send this thing home, man. I know it's kind of late. We're here. I know you want to get to the game, and I want to eat some dinner. But man, where can people follow you on Twitter? This has been one hell of a good conversation.
Yeah, Comet Coil. And before we get out of here, I got one question for you. It's a
What's up,
two-parter,
man?
exactly. So you just did the Spartan race, right?
Yes, it did.
How was that?
That was the hardest thing I've done physically in my entire life. It
So
was 3 miles straight up to about 7,500 feet elevation, and then you level off at the top of the mountain for about 6 miles. You go straight down. The whole time you're doing like crazy obstacles. You go all the way down, you do some more crazy obstacles, and then I'm not exaggerating this, dude. We went traverse 9,500 feet up elevation
wow.
wise on the 11th, 12th mile. By that 12th mile, dude, I just sat there at the top of that mountain and just enjoyed all of it. But getting down there, man, was really tough because you're running on rocks, you're running on a ski resort. It was tough. I'm just now better from it. I've got 3 more to do in the next 2 months. I'm doing another 13-mile one, another 9-mile one, and another 3-mile one here pretty soon. And then I'm done. That's it for me.
All right. And my second question to piggyback off that is, outside of maybe Seth Rollins, who I guess is the easy answer, is what WWE or New Japan or just professional wrestler you think would have the best time at something like that?
Oh.
As somebody who hasn't done it, I'm assuming Rollins, the big CrossFit guy, is probably the odds-on favorite. But who else you got? You got a top 3?
Yeah, I'm gonna go Cesaro,
Ooh, that's a good answer.
Kofi, and I want to stay away from anyone else who I think does CrossFit. Cesaro, Kofi, and the 205 people I think are too easy.
Give me a big guy.
Roman.
Yeah, it's probably a good answer.
Cesaro, Kofi, and Roman. You know what? I probably would want to throw Finn in there too. Finn would be a dark horse. But yeah, man, like those things are tough. I don't know if you've seen them on TV, dude, but it's 13 miles, 30 obstacles, and I love doing them. Like they're my thing, and it's worth every minute of it, man. Like I can't explain properly the feeling I felt getting across that finish line and just seeing my fiance as I'm running down the finish line waiting for me, and dude, it was incredible.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. It's really cool to see, you do those and people do those, and I know they have those all across the country, and it's something, as you get older, you put work into stuff. It's really good to see the rewards on stuff like that.
Yeah, man, like especially because I work those 2 jobs, so there are times I'll have like an hour break in between them both. So I remember coming up that mountain and just thinking of like all the days I did cardio when I didn't need to. And it all pays off, man. It does. It really does. Like I've taken the last 3 days off just to kind of recover. But, starting tomorrow, I'm hitting right back in the gym just to because I got another 13-mile one on the 20th of this month. So they're tough, man. They they're real tough. It's a test. A lot of it's mental, and people always ask like how you train for them. I wish I could tell you there's a way to train for jumping a 9-foot wall after running 12 miles, but it's a lot of it's just mental. You just got to do it.
Yeah, and it's awesome, man. Like I said, kind of get out of here, but it's been awesome kind of sit and chat with you, man. We've been Twitter friends for a while, so
Absolutely, man.
It's cool, man. This was awesome for me. Sorry, I had some technical difficulties before the show started, but we got it
all
going,
good,
man. And yeah, if anyone feels the need, follow me, call me out. I'm always down to interact with people.
Yeah, definitely, man. So again, where can people follow you again on Twitter?
Yeah, it's Comet Coil on basically anything and everything that you can have a handle on. And just hit me up there.
Okay, cool, man. So you guys can check out all 76 episodes of the Gully Blanchard podcast at gullyblanchard.podbean.com. We're on iTunes, we're on Spotify, we're on Stitcher, we're on Google Play Music. You can follow me on Twitter at Gully Blanchard, which is GULLYBLANCHARD. My Sacramento King stuff is going to be at A Royal Pain. Any wrestling stuff that I've written are going to be at No Coast Biased. All the podcasts are also located in No Coast Bias as well. Coming up this week, I'm going to talk to Dan from Wrestle Rap and hopefully talk to Stephanie McCarroll from the Jags podcast. But until next week, we'll see you guys then. Hey, Ben, thank you very much for everything, dude. I really appreciate it.
Yes, sir.
All right, man. This is for you, Bear and Caden. Get well soon, Marcus.